Hello, guys and gals, and this is part 10 of our reading of the Harvard Classics. And the Harvard Classics consist of the Apology, Phaedo, and Credo of Plato. We have already read Crito and the Apology of Socrates by Plato, and this was translated by Benjamin Jowett. There we'll be later reading the Golden Sayings of Epictetus, translated by Hastings Crosley, and the Meditations of Marcus Aurelius, translated by George Long. This was edited by Charles W. Elliott, LLD, with introductions and notes. This is from Grolier Enterprises Corporation. And we're going to go over the copyright information, which is pretty short. It says here, this was all copyright 1980, 1937, and 1907 by Grolier Enterprises Corporation. And it's manufactured in the United States. Now, we've been reading Plato, and Simmias and Cebes have come up with some arguments that have been troubling them, and we're going to see if Socrates answers them. They're wondering about the immortality of the soul, and we're going to see how they proceed. And Echecrates, or whatever his name is, had a question, and we were going to get an answer from Phaedo. Often, Echecrates, as I have admired Socrates, I never admired him more than in that moment. That he should be able to answer was nothing, but what astonished me was first the gentle and pleasant and approving manner in which he regarded the words of the young men, and then his quick sense of the wound which had been inflicted by the argument, and his ready application of the healing art. He might be compared to a general rallying his defeated and broken army, urging them to follow him and return to the field of argument. How was that? You shall hear, for I was close to him on his right hand, seated on a sort of stool, and he on a couch, which was a good deal higher. Now he had a way of playing with my hair, and then he smoothed my head and pressed the hair upon my neck, and said, "Tomorrow, Phaedo, I suppose that these fair locks of yours will be severed." "Yes, Socrates, I suppose that they will," I replied. "Not so, if you will take my advice." "What shall I do with them then?" I said. "Today," he replied, "and not tomorrow. If this argument dies and cannot be brought to life again by us, you and I will both shave our locks. And if I were you, and could not maintain my ground against Simmias and Cebes, I would myself take an oath, like the Argives, not to wear hair any more until I had renewed the conflict and defeated them." "Yes," I said, but Heracles himself is said not to be a match for two." "Summon me, then," he said, "and I will be your Aeolus until the sun goes down." "I summon you, rather," I said, "not as Heracles summoned Aeolus, but as Aeolus might summon Heracles." That will be all the same," he said, "but first let us take care that we avoid a danger." "And what is that?" I said. "The danger of becoming misologists," he replied, "which is one of the very worst things that can happen to us. For, as there are misanthropes, or haters of men, there are also misologists, or haters of ideas, and both spring from the same cause, which is ignorance of the world. Misanthropy arises from the two great confidences of inexperience. You trust a man to think him altogether true and good and faithful, and then in a little while he turns out to be false and knavish. And then another, and when this has happened several times to a man, especially within the circle of his most trusted friends, as he deems them, and he has often quarreled with them, he at last hates all men and believes that no one has any good in him at all. I dare say that you must have observed this. Yes, I have. And is not that and is not this discreditable? The reason is that a man having to deal with other men has no knowledge of them. For if he had knowledge, he would have known the true state of the case, that few are the good and few the evil, and that the great majority are in the interval between them. How do you mean? I said. I mean, he replied, as you might say to say of the very large and very small, that nothing is more uncommon than a very large or very small man. And this applies generally to all extremes, whether of great and small, or swift and slow, or fair and foul, or black and white, and whether the instance you select be men or dogs or anything else. Few are the extremes, but many are in the mean between them. Did you never observe this? Yes, I said, I have. And do you not imagine, he said, that if there was a competition of evil, the first in evil would be found to be very few? Yes, that is very likely, I said. Yes, that is very likely, he replied. Not that in this respect arguments are like men. There I was, led on by you to say more than I had intended. But the point of comparison was that when a simple man, who has no skill or dialections, believes an argument to be true, which he afterward imagines to be false, whether really false or not, and then another and another, he has no longer any faith left, and great disputers, as you know, come to think at last that they have grown to be the wisest of mankind, for they alone perceive the utter unsoundness and instability of all arguments, or indeed of all things, which, like the currents in the Euphrates, are going up and down in never ceasing ebb and flow. That is quite true, I said. Yes, Phaedo, he replied, and very melancholy too. If there be such a thing as truth or certainty or power of knowing at all, that a man should have lighted upon some argument or other, which at first seemed true and then turned out to be false, and instead of blaming himself and his own want of wit, because he is annoyed, should at last be too good to transfer the blame from himself to arguments in general, and forever afterwards should hate and revile them, and lose truth and knowledge of existence. Yes, indeed, I said, that is very melancholy. Let us then, in the first place, he said, be careful of admitting into our souls the notion that there is no truth or health or soundness in any arguments at all. But let us rather say that there is as yet no health in us, and that we must quit ourselves like men, and do our best to gain health. You and all other men, with a view to the whole of your future life, and I myself, with a view to death. For at this moment I am sensible that I have not the temper of a philosopher. Like the vulgar, I am only a partisan. For the partisan, when he is engaged in a dispute, cares nothing about the rights of the question, but is anxious only to convince his hearers of his own assertions. And the difference between him and me at the present moment is only this, that whereas he seeks to convince his hearers that what he says is true, I am rather seeking to convince myself. To convince my hearers is a second matter to me, and do but see and do, but see how much I gain by this. For if what I say is true, then I do well to be persuaded of the truth. But if there is nothing after death, still during the short time that remains, I shall save my friends from lamentations, and my ignorance will not last, and therefore no harm will be done. This is the state of mind, Simmias and Cebes, in which I approach the argument. And I would ask you to be thinking of the truth and not of Socrates. Agree with me if I seem to you to be speaking the truth. If not, withstand my might and main, that I may not deceive you as well as myself in my enthusiasm, and like the bee, leave my sting in you before I die. And now let us proceed, he said. And first of all, let me be sure that I have in my mind what you are saying. Simmias, if I remember rightly, has fears and misgivings whether the soul, being in the form of harmony, although a fairer and diviner thing than the body, may not perish first. On the other hand, Cebes appeared to grant that the soul was more lasting than the body, but he said that no one could know whether the soul, after having worn out many bodies, might not perish herself and leave her last body behind her, and that this is death, which is the destruction not of the body but of the soul. For in the body the work of destruction is ever going on. Are not these, Simmias and Cebes, the points which we have to consider? They both agreed to the statement of them. He proceeded, and did you deny the force of the whole preceding argument, or of a part only? Of a part only, they replied. And what did you think? And what did you think, he said, of the part of the argument in which we said that knowledge is recollection only, and inferred from this that the soul must have previously existed somewhere else before she was enclosed in the body. Cebes said that he had been wonderfully impressed by that part of the argument, and that his conviction remained unshaken. Simmias agreed and added that he himself could hardly imagine the possibility of his ever thinking differently about that. But, rejoined Socrates, you will have to think differently, my Theban friend, if you still maintain that harmony is a compound, and that the soul is a harmony which is made out of strings set in the frame of the body. For you will surely never allow yourself to say that a harmony is prior to the elements which compose the harmony. No, Socrates, that is impossible. But do you not see that you are saying this when you say that the soul existed before she took the form and body of man, and was made up of elements, which as yet had no existence? For harmony is not a sort of thing like the soul, as you suppose. But first the lyre and the strings and the sound exist in a state of discord, and then harmony is made last of all, and perishes first. And how can such a notion of the soul as this agree? A notion of the soul as this agree with the other? Not at all, replied Simmias. And yet, he said, there surely ought to be harmony when harmony is the theme of discourse. There ought, replied Simmias. But there is no harmony, he said, in the two propositions, that knowledge is recollection and that the soul is harmony. Which of them, then, will you retain? I think, he replied, and I will have a much stronger faith, Socrates, in the first of the two, which has been fully demonstrated to me, than in the latter, which has not been demonstrated at all, but rests only on probable and plausible grounds. And I know too well that those arguments from that these arguments from probabilities and imposters are, and unless great caution is observed in the use of them, they are apt to be deceptive in geometry and in other things too. But the doctrine of knowledge and recollection has been proven to me on trustworthy grounds. And the proof was that the soul must have existed before she came into the body, because to her belongs the essence of which the very name implies existence. Having, as I am convinced, rightly accepted this conclusion, and on sufficient grounds, I must, as I suppose, cease to argue or allow others to argue that the soul is a harmony. Let me put the matter, Asimius, he said, in another point of view. Do you imagine that a harmony or any other composition can be in a state other than that of the elements out of which it is compounded? Certainly not. Or suffer anything other than or suffer anything other than they do or suffer. He agreed. Then a harmony does not lead the parts or elements which make up the harmony, but only follows them. He assented. For harmony cannot possibly have any motion or sound or other quality which is opposed to the parts. That would be impossible, he replied. And does not every harmony depend upon the manner in which the elements are harmonized? I do not understand you, he said. I mean to say that a harmony admits of degrees, and is more of a harmony and more completely a harmony when more completely harmonized, if that be possible, and less of a harmony and less completely a harmony when less harmonized. True. But does the soul admit of degree? Or is one soul in the very least degree more or less completely a soul than another? Not in the least. Yet surely one soul is said to have intelligence and virtue and to be good, and another soul Yet surely one soul is said to have intelligence and virtue, and to be good, and another soul is said to have folly and vice, and to be an evil soul. And this is said truly? Yes, truly. But what will those who maintain the soul to be a harmony say of this presence of virtue and vice in the world? Will they say that there is another harmony and another discord, and that the virtuous soul is harmonized, and herself being harmony has another harmony within her, and that the vicious soul is inharmonical and has no harmony within her? I cannot say, replied Simmias, but I suppose that something of the kind would be asserted by those who take this view. And the admission is already made that no soul is more a soul than another, and this is equivalent to admitting that harmony is no more or less harmony, or more or less completely a harmony. Quite true. And that which is not more or less a harmony is no more or less harmonized. True. And that which is no more or less harmonized cannot have more or less harmony, but only an equal harmony. Yes, an equal harmony. Then one soul, not being more or less absolutely a soul than another, is no more or less harmonized. Exactly. And therefore has neither neither more nor less of harmony or of discord. She has none. And having neither more nor less of harmony or of discord. One soul has no more vice or virtue than another, if vice be discord and virtue be harmony. Not at all more. Or speaking more correctly, Simmias, the soul, if she is a harmony, will never have any vice, because a harmony, being absolutely a harmony, has no part in the inharmonical. No. And therefore a soul, which is absolutely a soul, has no vice. How can she have consistently with the preceding argument? Then, according to this, if the soul of all animals are equal and absolutely souls, they will be equally good. I agree with you, Socrates, he said. And can all can all this be true? Think you? Can all this be true? Think you? He said. And are all these consequences admissible, which nevertheless seem to form the assumption that the soul is a harmony? Certainly not, he said. Once more, he said, what ruling principle is there of human things other than the soul, and especially the wise soul? Do you know of any? Indeed, I do not. And is the soul in agreement with the affections of the body, or is she in variance with them? For example, when the body is hot and thirsty, does not the soul incline us against drinking? And when the body is hungry, against eating? And this is only one instance out of 10,000 of the opposition of the soul to the things of the body. Very true. But we have already acknowledged that the soul, being a harmony, can never utter a note of variance with the tensions and relaxations and vibrations and other affections of the strings out of which she is composed. She can only follow, she cannot lead them. Yes, he said, we acknowledge that certainly. And yet do we not now discover the soul to be doing the exact opposite, leading the elements of which she is believed to be composed, almost always opposing and coercing them in all sorts of ways throughout life, sometimes more violently with the pains of medicine and gymnastics, and then against more gently threatening and also reprimanding the desires, passions, fears, as if talking to a thing which is not herself, as Homer in the Odyssey represents Odysseus doing in the words, he bent his breast and thus reproached his heart. Endure, my heart, far worse hast thou endured. Do you think that Homer could have written this under the idea that the soul is a harmony capable of being led by the affections of the body, and not rather of a nature which leads and masters them, and herself a far diviner thing than any harmony? Yes, Socrates, I quite agree to that. Then, my friend, we can never be right in saying that the soul is a harmony, for that would clearly contradict the divine Homer as well as ourselves. True, he said. Thus much, said Socrates, of Harmonia, your Theban goddess, Cebes, who has not been ungracious to us, I think, but what shall I say to the Theban Cadmus, and how shall I propitiate him? I think that you will discover a way of propitiating him, said Cebes. I am sure that you have answered the argument about harmony in a manner that I could never have expected, for when Simmias mentioned his objection, I quite imagined that no answer could be given to him, and therefore I was surprised at finding that his argument could not sustain the first onset of yours, and not impossibly the other, whom you call Cadmus, must share a similar fate. Nay, my good friend, said Socrates, let us not boast, lest some evil eye should put to flight the words which I am about to speak. That, however, may be left to the hands of those above, while I draw near in Homeric fashion, and try the metal of your words. Briefly, the sum of your objection is as follows: You want to have proven to you that the soul is imperishable and immortal, and you think that the philosopher, who is confident in death, has but a vain and foolish confidence if he thinks that he will fare better than one who has led another sort of life in the world below, unless he can prove this. And you say that the demonstrations of the strength and divinity of the soul and of her existence prior to our becoming men does not necessarily imply her immortality. Granting that the soul is long-lived and has known and done much in a former state, still she is not on that account immortal, and her entrance into the human form may be a sort of disease which is the beginning of dissolution, and may, at last, after the toils of life are over, end in that which is called death. And whether the soul enters into the body, once only or many times, that, as you would say, makes no difference in the fears of individuals, for any man who is not devoid of natural feeling has reason to fear if he has no knowledge or proof of the soul's immortality. That is what I suppose you to say, Sebes, which I designedly repeat in order that nothing escapes us, and that you may, if you wish, add or subtract anything. We're going to have to stop that here and get Sebes' explanation later. We have been reading from Phaedo by Plato. We still have a long way to go, apparently. Yeah, there we go. I think that, Phaedo goes to page 113, so we are getting there. Anyway, we have been reading from the Harvard Classics, mainly Phaedo by Plato. So, there's that. So, anyways, if you like this content, make sure you like and subscribe, ring the bell so you know when I upload. Also, want to support me in any way. If you want to join the Discord server, all the information will be in the description below. And as always, thanks for watching, everyone, and have a great day.